What is going on, guys? In today's video, I'm going to be doing a breakdown of the full frame Lumix cameras all the way from the Lumix S1R2 down to the Lumix S9. I've got quite a few comments and people asking me about these cameras, whether they're coming from Sony ecosystems or Canon ecosystems or other cameras, and they are curious enough about the Lumix, but making that jump is a little bit scary. So I've got a bit of a breakdown here. This is going to be a bit more of a podcast style video where I'm just going to chat with you guys. We're just going to hang out and talk about Lumix cameras and why I've chosen to use them, and not convince you that you need to use them, but also maybe just educate you a little bit farther as to if you want to make that jump yourself or not. That's totally fine. Now, first off, if you are new here to the channel, my name is Alex. I have been a professional photographer and videographer for over 12 years. And I've recently, well, not recently, but for the last 7 or 8 years, been shooting cars and automotive specifically. I love my job. I've been very fortunate to work with brands like Shell, Subaru, tons of brands. Absolutely love my job. I love shooting cars. I love Porsches. Hopefully we'll get one. So subscribe to the channel so you can be a part of watching that journey. All that's to say, I am a hybrid shooter, so I will be judging these cameras, and my cameras have to work for both photo and video, because sometimes I'm just taking one camera body out and I need high quality video and I need high quality photos. So all the decisions that I've made as a content creator are based on, can this do both jobs well? I bought into the Lumix system quite a ways back. When I had quit my full-time job, I needed a camera that worked. So I actually bought the Canon R6 at the time, and there were so many limitations with that camera that I needed to find a different solution. So at the time, I actually looked at buying the Lumix S5. I rented it first, and the image quality, quite frankly, was well superior to the Canon R6 at the time. R6 Mark II wasn't out yet, so I bought the S5. Now, the S5 Mark I does have some limiting factors in that it is contrast detect autofocus, and for the most part it's okay for YouTube stuff, but for professional work it was unreliable. So when the S5 II came out, that's when they introduced the PDAF, the phase detect autofocus, and now the autofocus in these cameras is incredibly reliable. I love using these cameras for professional work, for personal YouTube work, and everything else. So let's talk about which camera might be right for you. Now, they have a whole other series of Micro Four Thirds cameras and other cameras, but I'm going to be focusing on the full frame cameras here because those are the ones that I personally like to use and that I've had access to. So we're going to start with the cheapest one. So this one is the Lumix S9. Now, I did get flown to Japan. They did give me this camera, and a part of the disappointing thing with everyone hating on this camera was it was actually my first actual trip with a camera brand. So I was hyped to be there. They obviously paid our way, paid the hotels, those kinds of things, but we didn't get paid to say anything about it, and they just made a genuinely really fun camera to use. So what's interesting about the Lumix S9 is that it has a full frame sensor, and a lot of cameras in this kind of bracket aren't full frame sensors. They only have Micro Four Thirds sensors. So they packed into this tiny camera a 24 megapixel sensor that does essentially everything that the S5 II does. And then they packed in some really creator friendly features. So one thing that I love using this camera for is my quick social media content. Because I'm able to bake my LUTs into this camera, I can use their vlog standard, so I'm getting tons of dynamic range. I think it's almost 14 stops of dynamic range. And then I've built my LUTs based off using that dynamic range, because you can stack 2 LUTs into this camera, which is just wild. So I have my presets built in. I can just put the LUT on and shoot with this camera. Often I'm doing vertical stuff or just stuff I want to export really quickly. And then I can put this directly to my phone using their Lumix Lab app as well. So in terms of this being like a creator only camera, it does that fantastically well. You get 2 dual native ISOs, so you have 640 as an ISO base in video, and you have 4000 as an ISO base. So if you're looking to get low light stuff as well, this thing handles it incredibly well. Being a full frame camera, it's pretty awesome. So the price point for this camera is around $14.99 US for a 24 megapixel camera, shoots up to 6K open gate, which is insane, 4K 60 frames per second with a crop, and it can do 10-bit color internally. Now, the big gripe with this is that it doesn't have an eyepiece, but there's a ton of other cameras being launched right now that don't have eyepieces that no one is upset about. So I personally don't care that it doesn't have an eyepiece. What I use this for is usually gimbal work or quick social work. Not like social work, like helping people in the world, but like social media work. So that's why I absolutely love this camera. Highly recommend it, honestly. It's very, very good and versatile. Some of the buttons maybe are a bit small, but once you've created your custom buttons and stuff on this, it works very well. So the next jump up from this is the S52 camera body, which we actually are filming with right now. And so this camera I purchased with my own money. And in fact, this might be why Lumix reached out to me and knew that I was a Lumix user, is because I loved the Lumix S5. Once the S52 came out with the phase detect autofocus, I had to have it. So I love this camera. And interestingly enough, the S9 and the S52 share a very similar sensor, if not the exact same sensor, 24.2 megapixels. So that to me as a hybrid shooter is a really good sweet spot for photography, having a 24 megapixel photo. It's big enough, sharp enough, maybe not to blow up if you're like doing like high-end professional work like posters or those kinds of things. But honestly, it probably still would pass. And then in video, you have all those same incredible features with 6K up to 30 frames per second in open gate. You've got 10-bit codecs 422. So in video world, it's really fantastic camera and can capture and shoot pretty well everything I needed to do in a professional setting. So working with larger brands like Shell or like Subaru or Pelote shoes or any of these car brands that I've worked with and I've got paid well to do, it's a professional camera. So you can't really tell at this point if it's not a professional camera because everything's shooting great stuff now. Like all the Sonys are shooting great stuff. All the Nikons are shooting great stuff. And the Lumix is well within and on par for often a cheaper price point, which we'll get into a little bit when we get into the comparisons to those other cameras later. But now, like I said, it has phase detect autofocus, and it's a bit of a smaller, compact body. So I really love that camera. The S52 goes for around $2,000 US for that full frame 24 megapixel fully hybrid camera body. So some of the downsides to this camera, in my opinion, is that it does not have full frame 60 frames per second. You can do 4K crop 60 frames per second, or if you're shooting in 1080p, you can do the full width of the sensor and have 60 frames per second at that 422 10-bit. So actually for a ton of work, whether it's for social media or I did a lot of real estate. And when I do real estate, I'm using full frame 60 frames per second in 1080p because they are often just posting on the web. They don't need that 4K deliverable. But if you need that 4K deliverable with a full frame 60 frames per second, then you're not going to get that in this camera. And there are some other cameras that will offer that for you, but you'll pay a good chunk of money for them. So if 24 megapixels is enough for you and you don't really need 60 frames per second at full frame, then this is honestly a fantastic choice. I've done years of professional work with these cameras. So that's the S52. They also released the S52X, which if you are wanting to be a professional video shooter, the S52X for I think only $200 more bumps some of your video codec features in the same camera body and camera sensor up into, now you can shoot ProRes internal. I think you can shoot RAW if you're using the SSD output. But if you are a professional videographer and you want that professional codec and the ability to really push around your video, then the S52X is probably the camera that you want. You have the same limitations that you do with the S52 with the frame rates, but for the most part, some of the codecs coming out of these cameras and the look and the vlog is just, to my eye, these cameras are, they're it. They look so close to like Ari, Alexa. When I was using Sony cameras, for me, it just took like a lot of pushing and pulling around of the collar to like make it feel right. And when I moved into the Lumix cameras, you would just put that classic color grade on and it looked fantastic with their Rec 709 LUT. And then you can do from there, whatever you want to make it look how you want it to look. The Canon looks fantastic, but I personally found that you would hit kind of noisy images sooner in the Canons than you do with the Lumix. The Canon didn't have the dual native ISOs that the Lumix S52 series offered me. So I liked the ability that if I needed to film something in lower light, I could kick up to that second dual native ISO in Vlog at 4000 and then have another clean plate to kind of shoot at. So the Canons didn't really offer me that. So to me, the Lumix was the better hybrid option. In summary, with the S52X, you get all intra codecs, you get ProRes, and I think you can shoot externally with RAW. As well, one thing I didn't mention with the S52 series and the S52X is they have like really good, they don't overheat because they got like these big old fans built into them, which is awesome. So you don't have any overheating issues with this at all, which does bring me back to the S9. The S9, when it was released, technically they had like a limit of 10 minutes that you could record at, but they've now actually with a firmware update taken away that time limit. They've just warned you that like, hey, if your camera gets hot, just be careful, like don't let it get too hot. So that's kind of cool that Lumix listened to a lot of the reviewers and was like, all right, we can take away the limit. It was just for like safety essentially, but you want me to take it away? We'll take it away. So another reason why I love Lumix is they actually listen to the reviews, the people that are a part of their Lumix community, and they make changes based on what their Lumix community is saying that they want features for, which brings us to the Lumix S1R2. Now this camera really, really excites me. And to be honest, I do not own this camera. I did not get flown to Norway when they released this camera, but they did fly my good friend Tom Colton, who is a fantastic photographer and camera reviewer. I'll link him up there. You can go check him out. He's hilarious. You'll love his stuff. He's actually lent me this camera because he has probably like 100 cameras and he's like, I don't need that one right now. So he's lent it to me. So I love this camera because this takes all the limitations that I wanted from the Canons at the time, or literally any camera, and it just takes away those limitations. So this camera shoots up to 8K. It's unbelievably good. It has that same Vlog. It's got like 14 plus stops of dynamic range. It has now a 47.3 megapixel sensor. So as a professional photographer, I'm now getting those really high resolution stills out of this camera. And you're getting 8K video. So it's rivaling kind of all of the best hybrid cameras at the moment, which is amazing. You have full frame 60 frames per second. Thank you so much. You get full frame 120 frames per second. I think it has like a 1.1 times crop, which is very negligible, and also the same crop that I believe you get in like the FX30s. I haven't used those cameras, to be honest, but I think it's the same crop that you get in those cameras anyways. So incredible specs out of this camera. The camera body changes a little bit. You get a really beautiful eyepiece that is actually really, really good and nice to use. I shot in some really bright conditions, shooting some snowboarding stuff, and so I got to use the eyepiece, and it's fantastic. Another huge update to this is you get the fully articulating screen on the S1R2, which means that there's really no angle you can't shoot at that the screen won't accommodate, whereas in the other ones you just kind of have this flip out and tilty screen. So you don't get that fully articulating option in the S52X and the S9. So really welcome upgrade in the S1R2. It feels a bit bulkier. There's this cool like little red line above this left hand side switch here, which allows you to go between camera modes and video modes. So again, something that you had to pick on the S52 and S52X is with your custom modes. You get 3 custom modes up here, which you can choose for photography or videography and save your settings in there. But now on the the S1R2, you can switch on this toggle here between photography, video, and S&Q modes, but then you have 5 custom modes on this dial as well that you can, change as much as you'd like to tickle your fancy. I love that so much, so I can switch between them, and then now I've got 5 custom video modes that I can shoot with. So incredible. I set mine to like my C1 is my open gate 4K or even 6K, I think, open gate. Then I switched to C2 is my 4K 60 frames. C3 is my 4K 120 frames. C4 is my quick, if I want to shoot some social content. Again, I just got my pre-baked LUTs on here. You can shoot in like an MP4 file that's a little bit lighter and send to your phone directly. Again, it's a bit of a sneaky thing that Lumix did with their app, is that it actually works incredibly well. So the Lumix Lab App means you can shoot in a lighter format, that MP4 light format, or it's called MP4 light on the S9. I don't think they called it light on the S1R2, but it's the same kind of thing where if you shoot in an MP4 file format, you can send it to your phone right away. So it's really sneaky, super cool, and it works really well. Now they've also developed the Lumix Lab app to a way that you can control your camera from your phone. So it works also very well. You can change a ton of the settings and stuff on there. So most apps that come with these cameras that I've used previously don't work very well. This one does work well, so I do recommend it. But overall, that's kind of why the S1R2 ticks all the boxes for me as a content creator, as a professional content creator, is that I'm getting those high megapixel photos. You have 8K video as well. And one thing that I was concerned about when I was shooting with this camera is typically with a higher megapixel camera, you actually get more noise in the image. That doesn't seem to be the case with this. You still have 2 dual native ISOs. And in fact, you kind of have, it's kind of like 4, honestly. So if you're shooting with the Vlog extended profile, which gives you more dynamic range, it's called extended Vlog. If you're shooting in that format, you have your dual native ISOs at 400 and 2000. Now, this is where this camera kind of got ripped apart online, is that the rolling shutter in that file format is quite bad. I personally haven't noticed it, and I shoot auto sport and I shot athletes with snowboarding, and I didn't really notice it. I think like the big thing with rolling shutter is if you're going to shake your camera like this, you're going to notice rolling shutter, but most people don't film like that or have subjects that move like that. Now, if you're doing quick left to right movements, okay, fine. But if you're telling a good story, most people aren't going to notice that something's bent a little bit in frame. So just keep that in mind, that rolling shutter is a thing, but you'll see it all over cinema and all over commercials. If you're looking for it, just tell a better story and people won't be looking for rolling shutter. Which brings me back to that Vlog point. The other dual native ISO, if you turn off that extended Vlog, your dual native ISOs are 200 and 1000. So something that initially I missed when I came to this R2 was I actually prefer like the 640 and 4000 ISO. I feel like there's a bit more versatility when I was going into like dark rooms or something. That 4000 ISO baseline almost gave me a bit more give when I was in those darker circumstances. But 400 and 2000 is also pretty good, and the prime lenses that go on these give you a lot of options as well. So not really lacking, and if you want, you can still push your ISO higher, and I didn't notice a ton of noise when I had to push my ISO a little bit higher. But those are some of the compromises, I guess, when you're going with a bigger sensor, is some different noise issues. So this camera goes for $3,700 US, which is not cheap by any means, but the limitations are very, very few. Now, when I asked ChatGPT to compare these cameras to other cameras, the Lumix S1R2 got compared with the Sony A7R5 with a price point of $900. Similar resolution, the 60 megapixel resolution in the Sony versus the 47 in the Lumix. The A7R5 has more advanced AI-based autofocus and better subject tracking, but the S1R2 wins in color science and robustness. But honestly, there's no issues with the autofocus now that there's phase detect autofocus in here. I haven't personally used the AI autofocus in Sony. If you have, let me know down below if that's something you'd miss. But for the most part, most autofocus systems are working pretty great right now. It also compared it to the Canon R5, which offers 45 megapixel stills, has 8K video like the S1R2, and fast dual pixel autofocus. So really not a huge benefit going to the R5. I'm not sure what the R5 Mark II is like, but this one is closer in price point to the R5 Mark I. The R5 Mark II is probably significantly more expensive, and the S1R2 handles heat better because it has the actual fans in it. So that's something to note as well, is that it's cheaper and handles heat better, and also has IBIS. I'm not sure if the R5 has IBIS or not. Interesting. If we go back down the line, the Lumix S52 goes for $2,000 or $2,200. If you go for the S52X, you get these blacked out badges. You don't have any white on here, which is kind of cool. So this is compared with the Sony A7 IV, which is $500 cheaper. The A7 IV offers similar 4K 60 10-bit, better autofocus and 33 megapixel stills versus the 24. The S52 offers better thermals, which I did and have experienced. I was making a video with my buddy Aaron, who used the Sony A7 IV, and his camera started overheating during our shoot and mine did not. So practically speaking, I have experienced the A7 IV overheating and the Lumix performing perfectly fine. He likes the Lumix cameras too. Like, he's got no gripes of them. He just was in the Sony ecosystem, but he likes using these too. This was also compared to the Canon R6 Mark II with a $2,500 price tag. The R2 gives oversampled 4K 60 and better burst rate for photos, which is interesting. The S5 II has pro level video tools at a better price point, which I 100% agree. The only real big thing you get with the R6 Mark II is you get that full frame, 60 frames per second. But I don't know. If you want that Canon thing, go for it. This is still cheaper. So honestly, the S52 is the best valued hybrid for under $2,000 that you can get. So the video specs just rival way more expensive cameras, in my opinion. Yeah, I didn't even talk about that. Like, the level of video features that you get in these hybrid camera bodies is absolutely bonkers. Like, waveforms, just everything you want from a professional video camera, honestly, aside from like built-in NDs, which we don't have yet. That'd be super cool in a Lumix camera, honestly. It's fantastic. Highly recommend. The Lumix S52X, which this is really interesting. It now gets compared to cameras that punch way above its weight class, like the Sony FX30, which is not a full frame camera, the Sony FX3, which is $3,900, so like almost $1,500, well, yeah, $1,500–$1,600 more. The FX3 has a full-size HDMI, which the S52X also has a full-size HDMI. Why are you saying that, ChatGPT? It has XLRs. Okay, well, there is a module you can buy for the Lumixes as well that go on top of these cameras, so you can get XLRs, internal ProRes RAW, which you can get with the S52X, as you can shoot ProRes, all intra, and RAW formats. So the S52X is the cheapest full-frame camera with ProRes RAW and SSD output. It also gets compared with the Canon R6 Mark II and the C70, but the R6 Mark II doesn't offer ProRes or SSD support, and the C70 is $5,500, so literally double the cost. So it's in a totally different class, which means that the S52X punches way above its weight. So it's kind of crazy when you start comparing these cameras' price points and video features to other cameras. That's what ChatGPT is doing because it's smarter than me, but it's very interesting. Now, the Lumix S9 and how it compares as well. It compares to cameras like the Sony ZV-E1, which is $1,799. Similar full frame sensor with apparently better autofocus. S9 wins in form factor and color science, but loses on internal audio features. Okay. I haven't used the Sony ZV-E1, but when they both released, they had similar cons, which is that they don't have the eyepiece, I think. Does the Sony ZV-E1 have an eyepiece? If it has an eyepiece, it's the only thing that really would make it a better camera. Again, it's not something I ever use, but the S9 is loaded with tons of video features, just like the S52 and S52X, and literally the only drawback to this thing is that it maybe overheats, but even that I've never experienced and they've taken away. the overheating limit. I guess the other real limitation is that there's only one SD card slot in here. All these other cameras have 2 SD card slots, but this also has a big battery, so the battery lasts forever on this thing. Lightweight. I love mounting this on cars, by the way. Perfect car mounting camera. Incredible, small, lightweight, amazing image quality. The Lumix S9 is also compared with the Canon R8. The R8 has similar video specs and better autofocus, but no IBIS, which is huge. Okay, let's talk IBIS. Lumix is unparalleled in their in-body image stabilization. You can run with these things, and it's kind of like you're not even running at all. So just insane what these cameras can do in terms of managing how bad we are at being stable, and all those different levels of in-body image stabilization you can turn on or off. So really cool. But the S9 includes IBIS, LUT preview, and it's a more creator-friendly layout. So that's kind of it. Like, these cameras, when compared to other cameras in similar price points, they're always cheaper. They always seem to be baked with tons of features that some of these other cameras are withholding to some degree. Yeah, I just love the Lumix cameras. Honestly, I'm so happy that I'm using them. Their innovation is also what excites me. I mean, if they're able to pack this much punch into an S1R2, and this is their photo-centric kind of like flagship, I'm very excited to see what they do with their video-centric flagship. Just cool. I love that Lumix listens to their people as well. So check them out. I hope that this has helped maybe educate you a little bit more. The specs are insane. You can Google them. But as a user, there's something about the way that these cameras look. They are just beautiful. The Vlog, to me, is one of the best looking video picture profiles of any camera that I've used, whether it's the Sonys or the Canons. To be honest, I don't really use Nikon. Not that I have anything against them. I mean, they're now going to red. They've got red. Oh my gosh, Nikon's going to also be an incredible competitor in the video space. So, yeah, if you're looking into it and you need a budget camera that can take fantastic photos and videos, then I think Lumix is going to knock it out of the park for you. Their lenses are cheaper as well. With the Sigma, with the L-mount Alliance, there's tons of lenses now available to you and accessible, also at affordable price points. So I did a video with my buddy Aaron comparing the Sony what's the standard Sony S Mark III, whatever the video one is. I'll link it here. I've been talking about a lot of cameras, bodies, numbers. Anyway, his camera body alone, I could have bought the Lumix S52, a lens, and a gimbal for the price of just the body alone. So it's really interesting what you can get. And if you guys can't tell the difference between this image or that image, which it's really hard to do these days because everyone's slapping LUTs on and grain on and filters and this, that, and the other thing anyway. So it really does depend what you're looking for in terms of your final image quality. For me, I just needed cameras that could kill it in both the photo and the video space, and the Lumix have not let me down ever since phase detect autofocus, and they just keep innovating and keep getting better. They get my vote if you're wanting to switch. I know it's a bit of work, but I love what they're doing. I love what they're doing. Anyway, let me know what you guys think of this video style, being a bit more candid, just chatting to the camera. It's a bit longer, I know. But anyway, appreciate you. If you are still here listening, thank you. You're awesome. Let me know if you want me to do more videos like this, a bit more candid, talking about gear, less curated in YouTube style. It's easy for me to do, which is kind of fun. So let's keep hanging out. We'll see you guys in the next video. Appreciate you. Peace.